Hey, are you a member of my Patreon? No? Go subscribe right now for as little as $1. Because if you are a member of my Patreon, you get to submit questions to me once in a while that I answer in a video. Why do I put this behind a paywall? Well, it's very simple. Being a moth YouTuber like me is very hard. I have the highest level moth YouTube channel on the whole internet. I'm pretty sure I filmed the most species out of anyone. I make very in-depth videos, and if what I do is valuable to you, which is subjective, it's totally subjective, then consider subscribing to my Patreon for as little as $1. It helps me make more, bigger and better videos. As a content creator, I'm still very, very dependent on crowdfunding and people helping me out. Basically, the more funds I can raise online, the more cool, awesome species I can breed and show off on YouTube, and the more free time I have to make videos. Now, it's time for the monthly FAQ. It's been a while since I've done it. In fact, maybe I should even apologize because I have been procrastinating a lot. There was some stuff behind the scenes I had to work on really hard before I could make an FAQ. But finally I found the time to do it, so let me answer your questions. The first question is by York Fantasy Rights. In your opinion, what are the best starter species for people who are looking into breeding butterflies? What? I messed it up. In your opinion, what are the best starter species for people who are looking into rearing and breeding moths and butterflies? Woo! My English needs improvement sometimes, guys. Well, if you have zero experience with moths, like absolutely zero, one of the first species that I could recommend is Samia ricini. It's not so hard to breed, and they do eat a somewhat wide range of food plants, such as like cherry, privet or ligustrum. Is it the perfect beginner species? I'm not sure. They are not completely foolproof, but they are very strong in captivity. If you keep them clean, you know, hygienic conditions, fresh food plant, they generally tend to survive in captivity. The only downside of breeding Samia ricini is the stock. There has been some terrible quality stock circulating that has been producing like crippled and deformed adults, which is very depressing if you think about it. And if you breed the wrong eggs or cocoons of really inbred individuals, then they might not survive even if you do everything correctly, or you might end up producing deformed adults, which is kind of a shame, but it won't be your fault. Overall, though, it's a very good species for beginners. I would say the second best species to use if you have like zero experience is probably Actias luna, the American moon moth. It was one of the first Eternids that I raised successfully, and you can kind of neglect them a little bit and they'll still survive. Also, they eat a ton of plants such as birch tree, sweet gum, cherry, oak tree, I'm pretty sure. What else? Persimmon. They just eat a ton of plants in general. I've raised them on a lot of stuff. I think they can eat willow too. So these are all like really common plants that you can find in your area. You do need to practice the basics, like they do need hygiene, they do need space, don't overcrowd them. They do need some semblance of ventilation, especially in the later life stages. But overall it's a very forgiving species, and you can try them over and over again until you succeed. Only downside is the Actias luna, the luna moth. They do have to hibernate in winter, which in my opinion is not super difficult, but it might be an obstacle if you are a total beginner. So these are two moths that I would nominate. It's basically Actias luna, Samia ricini. If I had to nominate another species, if you want to get started with hawk moths, it's Acherontia atopos, the death's head hawk moth. They are super easy to breed. In fact, they are one of the first moths that I managed to breed successfully. The caterpillars really look wonderful, and the moths look wonderful as well. It's the beauty of a species. Only downside is feeding the adults can be kind of a struggle in captivity. They don't like to be force fed, but you have to. You kind of have to force them to eat. Over time they do learn, but it's always a struggle to like wrestle them down on honey water. But yeah, those are the 3 best moths I think to get started with. If you have an option of obtaining them, try it. In terms of butterflies, if you want to breed butterflies, you're more of a butterfly than a moth person. Start with cabbage whites or anything from the genus Pyrrhus, especially the common ones that feed on cabbage. So that could be Pyrrhus rapae, Pyrrhus dapi, Pyrrhus brassica. All you need is some cabbage really, and you can put them in an enclosure with potted cabbage and they will breed. In fact, I made a video last year where I bred, I think, literally hundreds of them. It worked out pretty well. If you want to figure out the basics, how to breed butterflies, then you might want to watch that video. It's a very good video, it's a useful one. It shows the basics of like how to make a small setup for native butterflies. So that worked out pretty well. I choose these 3. York Fantasy writes also tells me, how do you get your moths to stay on you, especially when you're outside? I'm jealous. Here's the thing, a lot of people imagine that moths are like these frantic little creatures. Okay, bird fight. A lot of people imagine moths are these frantic little creatures and when you touch them they freak out and fly away. That might be the case in some circumstances, but the truth is it's all about body temperature. When a moth is completely cooled down and its body temperature is cold, then they can't fly away. They are cold-blooded animals and they are exothermic, which means that they need external heat for their metabolism to even function. Now what moths do is when they are active, when they fly at night, either they choose really warm conditions like warmer nights, but they can also warm themselves up by shivering, moving the wing muscles, which raises their body temperature. So they have to start their engine, kind of. But the funny thing is when they are cooled down, when their engine is not started, it's actually in most cases easy to pick them up and they'll just sit on your finger. Moths are a lot more docile than most people imagine if you really know how to touch them and not freak them out. I guess it also comes down to experience, but also down to the fact that moths, when they are really cooled down and settled, are actually very docile and don't really mind being touched most of the time. You might be shocked and surprised to learn that, but it's true. Another question from York Fantasy writes, sorry for so many questions. Your opinion for overwintering cocoons. Is it the best to keep them outside or in the refrigerator? Outside all the way, but the real answer is it really depends on where you live. I live in the Netherlands, Northern Europe, and I live in what is classified as a maritime climate. What's a maritime climate? Well, it's when you're close to the ocean, and the ocean has a mellowing effect. For example, our summers are milder and cooler because of the water temperature, which is lower than the air temperature in summer. But our winters are warmer because the water is warmer than the air temperature in winter. So, in a maritime climate, I guess it prevents summer from being super hot and it prevents winter from being super cold. It kind of evens everything out to a certain extent. I find that a lot of species can survive the winter in the Netherlands. We do have frost, we do have snow, but we don't get extreme temperatures that much. For example, minus 10 degrees Celsius, which is really cold. It rarely happens in the Netherlands. I'm 32 years old. I've lived here all my life. And I can probably count on one hand the days that it was minus 10 degrees Celsius in winter or more. Average winter temperature here is more around 5 to even 10 degrees Celsius, which is kind of warm. Just compare it to Canada or France or Poland or Russia, of course, or really any continental place. Even the United States of America in the north is much colder. I know there's probably exceptions. But generally speaking, for me, placing cocoons outdoors, most species that are capable of hibernating, that have some semblance of cold resistance, can survive the winter in the Netherlands. But it depends where you live, right? If you live in Russia, if you live in Canada, and you hibernate species outdoor that are like from Mexico or Taiwan, where the winter is very mild and gentle, you're gonna kill them. The frost is just gonna end up necking them. So the answer is more nuanced than you think. For me, it's outdoors all the way, simply because refrigerators have a drying out effect, a desiccating effect. It's a well-known side effect of refrigerators is everything there kind of dries out. If you want to put cocoons or eggs in there, that's fine. But you really need to protect them well from the moisture being sucked out. So for me, it's outdoors. But decide for yourself, just don't follow everything I do literally. Because if you live in another climate, it may be a different story, you know? You might just end up freezing all your cocoons to death. Because you live in a place that's extremely cold, unlike me. Next question is from Christoph. Christoph, thank you so much for being a part of my Patreon. He asked me, I hope it's not too late to ask you a few questions. Never. I've been really curious and excited to hear your thoughts. Okay, let's see. Number 1. How often does it happen that a moth emerges with poorly developed wings? Your moth cycle videos, they always unfold so beautifully. I do my best to provide the right conditions during the pupal stage, but sometimes a moth still comes out with deformed wings. Is there any way to prevent this? Well, the real answer to that is no. There is no way to completely prevent it. So the answer to this is actually a really complex one. Wings of moths are really frail, and pumping them up is a delicate process with a lot of factors that come into play. Now there's factors that are preventable and factors that are not preventable. I'll start with the ones that you cannot prevent. Genetics. It's well known that if you inbreed moths, if you pair brothers with sisters, over time the bloodline becomes weaker and smaller due to recessive genes. I mean, inbreeding is a problem for almost any sexually reproducing species. It's not very beneficial. And it ends up to, affecting your vitality. And in moths, you tend to get like crippled wings to a much higher frequency. So if your moths are just a bad bloodline, bad stock that is inbred, or a breeder sells you a bloodline that's not very healthy or strong in the first place, then it's not your fault. And there might be some underlying factors too. For example, let's talk about the ones that we can control. Diet. If they have inadequate diet, then it might impair their development and the wings get atrophied and don't pump up as well as they should. Humidity. You need to get the humidity right. Pupa can dry out in captivity. If you keep pupa in a very dry place, in a very dry box for like 10 months, it might suck all the moisture out of the insects. And they might not even have enough body fluid in general to pump up the wings. Also, if the environment is too dry when they come out of the cocoons, the wings might not end up inflating perfectly. It's because as the wings unfold, they are still humid and the air dries them out and hardens them. And if the air is too dry, it hardens them too easily. It might be diseases. Some diseases are obvious, like your caterpillars get infected, they get sick and die. But some are more subtle and can be inherited by moths for several generations. It might be microorganisms, fungi, bacteria, which technically are preventable, but in practice it's extremely difficult to prevent diseases and viruses and fungi in captivity unless you have a laboratory and a completely sterile environment. And even then it might come in from outside contamination. So this falls under the category technically preventable, but practically not really that preventable. Also, some individuals are just weak and might not really make it. That being said, there's a lot more water content. For example, if the water content in the leaves, you're feeding them dry leaves, is too low, they might end up being a little bit dehydrated. You need to give the caterpillars more to drink. Anything that can impair the development, anything from stress to the pupa being shipped, to pupa being touched too much, improper conditions, being too warm, being too cold, temperature shock, anything that interferes with the development of the moth in the pupa can result in crippled wings. Now I would say thank you for saying that in my videos all the moths turn out perfectly and beautifully, but I do want to say it's a little bit of deception. Things do go wrong here, but if I raise a bunch of moths and they all come out deformed and completely fucked up, I might be tempted not to upload the video, you know. And there are some cases where I upload my failures to YouTube. I don't want to like show myself in a better light than what's really the truth, than what's really the case. At the same time, it's just depressing content, like, guys, I was raising caterpillars and they died. Guys, I was raising moths and they came out crippled. I guarantee you that it happens here as well, behind the scenes. I am not immune to this. And if you believe that I'm immune to this, that's my fault, because that's just manipulation, it's cherry picking. So maybe in the future I'll decide to upload more of my videos where the breeding project doesn't work out well, because that happens often. And I don't know any moth breeder that can perfectly raise any species without any setbacks or failures. It's part of this hobby. It happens to me too. But yeah, a lot goes into it. Genetics, temperature, humidity, quality of the diet, the food, hydration, moisture, relative humidity, overwintering, the correct temperature during winter, the correct temperature during spring, stress, diseases, viruses, inheritable diseases. There is just so much that can cause moths not to properly inflate the wings. And generally, it's a selective process. Only the strongest ones generally survive and make it. If something goes wrong, it might be your fault. It might not be your fault. Sometimes you don't even really know the difference. Don't feel too bad about yourself. Keep going, keep trying. So, next question. Are you planning any exciting trips abroad soon to continue your research? I'd absolutely love to see a video about the endemic species of Madagascar. Interesting question, thank you. Gonna have a Red Bull. The answer to this is kind of complicated because I have no travel plans at the moment. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm not gonna go abroad anytime soon, but I do have like a lot of unfinished footage from trips abroad. For example, you all know I worked in Brazil. I worked in Uganda to trap, document and study the local moth species. And a lot of this footage is still on my hard drive and it's not finished. Why? Because editing videos is work. It is a lot of work. They are being worked on behind the scenes, don't worry. They will be online this year or next year. I just have so many stuff to edit. So the good news is there is going to be new footage of me in Uganda and Brazil, filming the local moth species. The bad news is I'm not sure about trips to other countries. I'm kind of tired of traveling. Now this might be a bit personal information, but last year I did a trip to Uganda and I underestimated how much it cost. I was there for 2 months. We had a private driver, we had staff, we had a cook, we had a cleaner. It was brilliant, it was amazing. I took a friend with me to Uganda. We had a fun time, we saw a lot of species, but it cost me about 9,000 euros. Actually 11,000 euros if I add everything up. I am still in debt. I had to call my mom while I was crying. I was crying because I was in Uganda and I completely run out of money and I had no facility to come back. Yeah, I messed up, I fucked up. The problem is, in the past, when I traveled to other countries, the trips were always sponsored for me. When I went to Brazil, the trip was paid for me by Regua, a natural reserve in Brazil where I trapped many moth species. Yeah, that was a fun and amazing time and it was all paid for me. By Regua themselves the first time, or the second time, and the first time everything was paid for me by a fan. Yes, you might be shocked to hear this, but I have fans who pay for a whole trip for me to go abroad. Yes, I get that much donations sometimes. But this time I decided to pay for myself. And because in the past I was always sponsored by somebody or I had some kind of charity, I completely miscalculated how much this kind of stuff really costs. I'm still 11,000 euros in debt. Until I pay it off. I borrowed it from my family. I am not gonna go travel because it's disrespectful. I want to pay the money back before I... You know, it's kind of like when somebody owes you money and they go on an expensive trip to the Bahamas and on a cruise ship and you're like, hey, what the hell? You still owe me money. I want to show people that I'm serious. I want to pay the money back. So for the next coming year, I'll be working. I'll be working to pay back the trip to Uganda that I did. Because I'm in massive, extreme debt. Which is completely my fault. I'll be okay though. I have a job, I can work, I have 2 hands, I'm strong, I'm tall, I can lift stuff. I'll apply to any job I can get, work many hours and pay back my family. They were kind of for me to help me, so I'll make sure to repay it. It's the right thing to do. After I repaid it, I'll think of future trips. I wish this channel was bigger, I wish I had more viewers. That would make traveling a bit more financially sustainable. But that's why I keep making videos. Maybe one day we'll get a breakthrough and we'll get like a lot of support or a lot of views, which makes traveling more easy and more possible. Stay tuned. Next question is also an interesting one by Christoph. Which moth species life cycle is your ultimate dream to study and capture on video? It's very hard to pick one single species. It's very hard. But I can tell you the ones that if I could breed anything, I would love to breed them the most. Number 1 is probably Actias chapai. It's a very rare moon moth species found only like a super high altitude in places like Laos, Vietnam, China. They live very high in the mountains and kind of feed on pine tree. They are very similar to Actias dubernardi, except that they have extremely long tails. I think out of any moon moths, it must have the longest tails. And the reason why this species is number 1 on my list is actually a very shallow one. I love moon moths. I think that my favorite type of moth, and you guys know I love moths very much. I am insanely obsessed about moths. But for me, the number 1 kind of moth that I love to breed are moon moths. So these are moths generally from the genus Actias. You could be generous and also include Graelsia and Argema. But my absolute favorite is the genus Actias. I am obsessed with Actias. I love them. Which is the reason why I have so many breeding videos on my channel of different Actias species. It's very simple. They are my favorites. And I have raised so many Actias species that all the common ones I've already done. Even some of the really rare ones I've already raised in captivity, so there's not many left. Except the really hard, unobtainable, super rare ones. But number 1 is probably Actias chapai. I just think it's super beautiful and I love the types with long tails. Is it ever gonna happen? It might, but it's very unlikely. They are super expensive and super hard to obtain. If I get the opportunity, I will do it right away. In that regard, probably my second most wanted species is Actias groenendale. I believe it is mostly from Timor and Sumba Island. It's a very beautiful moon moth. Of course, number 2 is another moon moth. But it's almost impossible to obtain in captivity. Species from Indonesia are super hard to obtain due to legislation. Exporting wild animals from Indonesia with no permit is super illegal. They'll throw you in jail, even if it's a moth, which might be a good thing. They were trying to stop trafficking of animals. Then again, going the legal way is very, very, very hard. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's ever gonna happen. On top of that, in the wild it's a super rare species, which is restricted to a few small islands. On top of that, to find eggs or breeding material, you need to find larvae or cocoons or a female. Females hardly show up to light traps. I mean, they do, but it's generally speaking just super rare. So with all the factors combined, you know, it's a rare species. We might not even get the opportunity to get eggs or export them. Chances are super, super, super unlikely. But never say never. I'm still kind of young. Kinda. And I still have many years of breeding moths. You never know. But I would love to raise this species. Also, its life cycle is very poorly documented. So it would be valuable to science. My third most desired species would be breeding the white witch moth. It's the biggest species of Lepidoptera. In fact, it's the biggest flying insect on planet Earth. And its life cycle is unknown to science. Yep. Which is why it would be interesting to breed them. First of all, it would be kind of like a small scientific breakthrough. If you want the details, go watch my white witch moth videos, guys. I talked about these animals for like 2 freaking hours, and I don't feel like repeating all the information. I've seen them in the wild. I've tried breeding them. I even had eggs and small caterpillars. But I couldn't find any houseplant that they would eat. Which is the big problem. The houseplant of this moth is currently just unknown. And until it's known, chances of breeding it are almost zero. But it's probably one of my most desired species to do a breeding video of for obvious reasons. Then we can say I did breeding of the biggest moth on Earth. On top of helping science, I guess. Oh, there's a pigeon. Hi, buddy. He was making eye contact. My fourth most desired species is probably Eocoa trimeni. It is from South Africa and Namibia. It's an extraordinary, exclusively amazing species. The good news is while it's rare, it's not unobtainable. It's just that not many people are willing to go to South Africa to obtain moth species. Now guys, South Africa is amazing. They have amazing nature, amazing environment. I think South Africa is one of the best places in the world to be for nature. I'm not kidding, I love it. But I'm a little bit scared to go there alone. On top of that, it's expensive. On top of that, this moth eats Melianthus mostly, which is a houseplant I don't have in Europe. So if I need to do a breeding project with Eocoa trimeni, I need to plant and prepare Melianthus either in my garden or a greenhouse or a laboratory. Yeah, it requires a lot of planning plus traveling. But the good news is on this list of impossible to obtain and breed species, it might be the most attainable one. If this channel ever grows bigger and I make more income, it's probably one of the first species I will really breed. If I have like a professional space, a laboratory, and the facilities to travel the world a little bit more. This is a species I'm gonna breed on YouTube maybe one day. Stay tuned. I know I'm talking big, I have a big mouth, but it might just happen. Yeah, there are some obstacles, but they're like not super impossible. Another species that I would love to breed and show you is the genus Archaeoattacus, any species. But I'm gonna shut my mouth, because I'm working on it. Let me show you a teaser. All I'll say, I'm not gonna spoil the surprise, it might take me a while to work on it. But it's in the works. Archaeoattacus are very nice, they're like atlas moths but purple and harder to breed. Yeah, stay tuned. It might just happen, if I'm successful. I could stop here, I could shut my mouth, but I'm gonna keep going. We are number 5, aren't we? Well, number 6 would probably any Polytisana species. I think Polytisana are super beautiful. But to find them you have to go to Chile. Chile is also an amazing country with many endemic moth species. But again, travel is so expensive, it's just hard to do it and justify it financially. For a moth channel with 50,000 subscribers, On this channel I earn like $100 a month now in ad revenue and like $400 in donations, which it adds up to like $500 a month, which is nice. I love it. I'm not being ungrateful, I'm not complaining. The fact people want to donate to my channel and give me that amount is amazing. On top of views that I get. I am not complaining, really. I'm in a very privileged position, in fact. At the same time, it's still not the amount of funds that I require to go to South America and do moth breeding there, or import species from there to Europe. So I'm gonna wait until somebody else is breeding them and is willing to sell me the eggs of them. Or I might go myself, but Polytisana are amazing. They look like they've been manually drawn with a pencil by an artist. I think their appearance is absolutely breathtaking. Let's do another one. Leucanella apollinari. Super rare, super hard to obtain. It has been raised before in captivity, so there's that. Am I ready to breed such a rarity? I don't know. If I get the opportunity, I sure will. It's just, I love pieces that are pink. I know it sounds silly, but the pinkness makes for a really beautiful insect in my opinion. I love it. Start with another Red Bull. I could move on to the next question, but I kind of like this question. I might mention a few more moth species. But I also don't want to yap about this question for too long, so I'm just gonna say it fast. Next one is Graelsia isabella. The good news is the Spanish moon moth, Graelsia isabella, is actually attainable in captivity. In fact, I have raised them already multiple times. The main problem is I never have really a super good result. And if I want to make a life cycle video, here's the problem. Would you watch a breeding video by somebody that like kills 90% of his caterpillars and they don't survive? No, I don't think so. So I really need to perfect them. So what's been stopping me from making an episode about breeding Graelsia is because I can't breed them. Yes. They are a very hard species. In my opinion, they are one of the toughest Saturnids out there to breed. I've just not really been able to successfully do them. I've been able to raise a few caterpillars from egg to moth, but that's about it. Like a full breeding video is still in the works, but my gosh, it is extremely super hard, I'm not joking. So for that to happen, I need to figure this species out better. The same is for Agema mitriae. There's been videos of them on my channel. It's probably the next species on my list. It's extremely large. It's probably the world's largest moon moth species, or comet moth if you consider them to be that distinct. They are a beautiful species. They are super big. They are amazing. But again, I've been unable to breed it. So this is what Graelsia and Agema have in common. They are tough as nails. Even somebody like me, I've been rearing silk moths for like 12 years. I still have been unable to figure them out. Tips are welcome. If you are somebody who knows how to breed them, because I am struggling with these. I'm not kidding. I'm not afraid to admit it. Yeah, I'm not the kind of breeder who can just breed any species. There's still stuff I really struggle with, and two are Agema and Graelsia. The good news is they are for sale, they are attainable in the hobby. Not commonly, but it's possible. They are not as impossible as the other species on this list. So they might happen in my lifetime if I figure them out. They are just really hard. Could mention more, but I think I'm about to move on to the next one. The next question is by Inverts UK. If I'm not too late, I have a question. How do you keep your moth enclosures? I remember you had them on that blue industrial racking stuff a few years ago. But given you seem to rear so much, what do you do with all of them? Is there like a specific setup, or do you find the most appropriate area and have moth enclosures randomly around? Also a second question, what is the most awkward situation you've been put in doing something entomology or Lepidoptera based, like weird encounter strapping or collecting host plant or something? That's an interesting question. So it's basically as you described. I find the most appropriate area to put the enclosures. If you pay close attention to my videos, I actually place some of the enclosures outside, outdoors. And in other cases, they are inside of my house, inside of my bedroom. There's been even some rare cases where I rear stuff in my basement, like Dubernardi. But I think the biggest problem that I have as a YouTuber and moth breeder is I don't have a professional place to rear moths. Yes, I complain about it in almost all of my videos because I feel like a cook who doesn't have a professional kitchen. I feel like a painter who doesn't have paint or equipment. I feel like I'm a musician and I don't have an instrument. I am unable to reach my potential as a moth breeder because the spaces where I breed moths are basement, my bedroom, which is messy and dirty, or outside, which is putting the moths basically at the grace, at the mercy of the elements. I also have an old house that leaks. New houses, new apartments are generally very insulated. My house isn't. That means if it rains indoors, it becomes humid. If it's hot indoors, it becomes hot. If it's cold indoors, it becomes cold. And sometimes my breedings of moths don't work out as well as they should because I have no control over the conditions, which is painful and it sucks. So to answer your question, I try to find the best area, but sometimes it's kind of a gamble. And it's painful. Yeah. One day my goal for this channel is to have a professional breeding space, guys. Like a laboratory, a greenhouse, anything. That's not this crummy old house. If you want to help, join my Patreon. Or consider donating to my PayPal. Buy something from my Etsy. We'll talk about that later in the video. I need to promote that stuff, guys. It's the only way I can make it and like become somebody who can keep all the rare species. Now the second question, what is the most awkward situation you've been put in doing something entomology or Lepidoptera based, like weird encounters, trapping or collecting houseplant? I wouldn't say awkward, but one time we were in Uganda and we came across an angry park ranger who said that our activity was illegal. Okay, we had a permit, but we were in a protected natural reserve. The guy became a little bit threatening, which is scary. In Uganda, these rangers carry guns. But turns out that like $40 changed his mind. Maybe he was looking for a bribe. I don't know. The legal situation in Uganda is strange because it's hard to get like official legal permits for some of the restricted areas. But you're supposed to like bribe some official and they will allow you. It's a messed up situation, but that's what happens if you have a government that barely functions. Yeah. I don't want to hate on Uganda, it's a beautiful country, but some countries doing everything the legal way is a headache or impossible and you still run into trouble. Or you run into somebody who has too much power and is looking for a bribe. The next situation is not very awkward, it was fun, but I've come across wildlife during moth trapping. In Brazil, one time I came across a tapir that was very curious.
Guys, something is walking here in the dark. And it's not a dog. Dude, what's this? Oh my god. Oh my freaking god, it's a tapir. Are you for real? Is this happening? Oh my god. Guys, I am not faking this. This is a real tapir. Guys, I have to make a picture. I'm kinda scared. Can I bite? Guys, I have company tonight. Wow. I can't believe that. I'm at a loss for words. How am I supposed to conduct myself in front of a wild animal? And the tapirs here are reintroduced, so they aren't very scared of humans as they should be. Maybe I'm more scared than the tapir. Wow, I can't believe this. That's... You never know what you're going to see in the forest. Oh my god.
So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that could happen if you're moth trapping, I guess. Not awkward, but it was one of the highlights. There was also another night where I was moth trapping and hundreds of wasps showed up. I got stung multiple times, like 7 times. So let me show you the wasps.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have to wear protective gear because the light trap has attracted hundreds and hundreds of wasps. And I already got stung 5 times. I didn't film it, but it happened. I even got stung on my chin, on my hand, my wrist, my back. So I had enough. I had to exchange my t-shirt for something wasp-proof. It's horrible. It's terrible. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the moth trap seems to be attracting about 1 million wasps. Not kidding. Here's the moth wall. And here's a nice big saturnid I should take a picture of later. Oh, it's going... Never mind. I'll fetch that one later. And here... It's just a crazy amount of wasps. Damn. Now, people, I'm not trying to let the insane amount of wasps ruin my night. But I'm gonna be honest, they already ruined it a little bit. This is not fun, this is just dangerous. And if you come close, they sting. I got stung 5 times and it hurts. Look at how many fucking wasps. Oh my... Sorry for swearing, I'm a little bit bitter because this is just nonsense. Look how many wasps. I never asked for this. It's just stupid. Man. And I have to walk past that to get some saturnids. That really sucks. But we do have some awesome saturnids on the sheet. So let's swim in the ocean of wasps to get the good moth.
And one time I was catching a moth and I even got stung on camera while I was filming. When I was grabbing the moth out of my net, because I also accidentally caught a wasp and he wasn't too happy. Let me show you.
Ah, fuck. 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 Great, I've caught it together with like 10 wasps. Let's carefully get it out, but not the wasps. Ah, fuck. God. It's the wasps. Alright, I just received my 6th sting. Let's put the moth back. Oh, God. One of the wasps got me again. Can you see this on my finger? This spot. Oh, God. Oh, that hurts. That's a wasp sting. God, that's wasp sting number 6. How many stings can I take before it gets dangerous? God.
Next question is by Timon. How crazy would it be to raise Malakosoma species? Is it even possible to have the nest in artificial conditions? Sorry. That's a good question. I think in Europe and even North America there are several Malakosoma species. But I gotta be honest with you, I never really tried to breed them yet. Not because I don't like them. It's just that there's too many moth species out there in this world. Even doing this after decades, there are still species I've never tried or bothered with. This may sound like a shallow take, but I think every moth species is breedable under the right conditions. So it's just that some of the conditions are almost unattainable compared to other species that don't have that many requirements. I do know people that breed European Laciocampid species. Have no experience with Malakosoma, but I imagine even if you had like a big plastic box or an enclosure, they would form a nest there. Perhaps you could use live or potted houseplant. But to be honest, this is a conjecture. I'm not really sure. I've never raised Malakosoma. So there you go. Next question is by Tyler. Over the course of your travels, have you had a moth or butterfly species you really wanted to see or film, but had eluded you while you were there? Oh, many. Here's the thing, guys, if you travel to another country to see butterflies and moths, expect to see many beautiful species, but I think it's pretty impossible to come with a wish list and leave the country having seen everything on your wish list. If you look for butterflies and moths, you're being a naturalist. Some species hide high in the canopy. Some species are rare. Some species rarely show up. Some species don't fly in the same season. Seeing everything at once is simply impossible. Yeah, there's many that I would have liked to see, but I didn't. For example, while I was working in Brazil, I really would have liked to see a Copiopteryx species. I think they're brilliant with their long tails. I would have loved to get like a picture of one. But that didn't happen. Thing is, they are kind of scarce and they don't show up very often, even in places where they're common. So it's just a matter of luck. I've got a lot of interesting species in Brazil, but no Copiopteryx, sadly. And while I was in Uganda, I would have liked to see Papilio antimachus, the biggest butterfly in Africa. I didn't see it, but understandably they are restricted to mostly, I think it's the western side of the country where there's the big rainforest, like Bwindi rainforest. And even there they are not commonly seen. They are like flying above the treetops most of the time. So there's that. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Would have liked to see that one. I think that's the end, folks. That's it for now. I would like to say bye-bye. Thank you everyone who sent me questions. Don't stop sending me questions. I'll try not to be as late with the next FHQ as this one. That being said, it's sporadic. I do prioritize making moth videos and life cycles over doing FHQs. Then again, it is nice to be in touch with my audience. If you sign up to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you can be part of this as well. More about that later in some of the next videos. Thank you for supporting. See you in the next one.